Hi everyone. We're going to start in just a few minutes, so just waiting for people to join. So you've all have the instructions for accessing the VM. If you can connect, if anyone have any problems, let myself and also Abram know. We can help out with that.
Yeah, I'm purely here as an assist. So as just put in the chat if you need some help getting connected to a VM, and I'll help you out.
I've been trying to figure out that map behind you, Abram.
It's European soccer teams.
Okay, because the sizing seemed a little bit funny for many of the countries there.
No, yeah, it's all just location of clubs and stuff. So.
I saw that Faroe Islands lost to, what was it, Wales?
Yeah, I mean, Wales has a few more of a population on them, so I think they were probably favored.
Yes.
So again, if anyone has any issues connecting to their VM, essentially, and here, well, I'm not showing my screen, but all you do is you log in through Microsoft System. It should bring up the lab, and there should be an icon to download a remote desktop link. Once you do that, you can open it. We include a login and email. User CM Tech, and it's password's like Tech CM 2020 or something like that. Once you enter that, you should be in the machine. It should have everything set up and configured already for you to use.
Abram, can you make me a co-host? Something it's not letting me share my screen.
I don't have access to that, but you should be able to share your screen straight away.
It just says you cannot start screen share while another participant is sharing. Do you have a stop sharing?
I'm actually not sharing. I don't know who is sharing.
Is Kiyoshi on this?
It's whoever.
Sorry, I'm sharing.
Okay.
Oh, so you are as the host. Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you make me co-host? Or well, I guess I don't need to. Yeah. Okay.
I think everyone can do.
No, I can't. I think you're the only person that can do that. I guess because you signed in first. I don't know.
So Kiyoshi, are you starting this, or are you?
Yeah, I'm starting. Yeah, I'm starting. At least the first part of like a presentation. Then going to Rabo later.
Also, as you're working, if you have a small question, be sure you can just put it in the chat or message me directly, and I'll try to answer directly to you in the chat. If it's something we can't resolve just through regular chat, then we could maybe just escalate and have either Andrew or Kiyoshi share that. But for the most part, I should be able to help through the chat.
Okay. How is anyone waiting room or waiting? Okay, so we have still 4 people coming. Okay, I think 25 people currently coming up, and no one in the waiting room. So maybe we could start. And the recording is on.
It should be recording already.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for registering and then be on here Friday afternoon. we have 2 more to go, but hope you enjoy a little bit here, and hopefully learn something. I'm not sure. You learn quite a lot. You guys are advanced Plex people. But yeah, we just talk about the first section. I just talk about kind of little bit deeper than what we discussed yesterday's session. Then each of you, I hope, allocated Bravo VM, so hopefully you can spend time to play a little some exercise on it. Okay. In response to my PowerPoint. Good. Okay, now it's on. Okay, so in this session, we discuss the platform using CA Plex. And so each of you has different application, different active apps, different requirements. So we cannot cover every single, technology conversion, etc. So we just cover first like a preparing point, approach and tips, and then we'll do some exercise with. Okay. So speakers. So here, Ebrem, Andrew, and Kiyoshi as usual members. So all we are here is kind of clone robot talking. So we are all done this session. So I mean this conference. So we are in the beach right now. So we're just talking using robot. So okay. Okay. So first, yeah, try to start to understand your model, your application. That's kind of a starting point. So well, variant, well, which probably everyone knows. Well, how much you get like a standard layer talk, Jeremy did yesterday, and also how much you rely on the pattern. That's the first thing, really reduce how much effort you need to migrate. If you rely on everything from a configured variant, etc., your path is one small amount, but it's down a little bit. And hopefully everyone knows. And each default for, well, this is showing that .NET configuration, but we see has certain way. Where WinNTC, you have certain way, and the WinC RPG, you have certain way, and then there's a .NET and .NET RPG or Java or Java RPG. So there's a certain standard way to configure your at least a Broadcom CA pattern or base, and then hopefully you get a huge benefit to start with. But if you find, well, that's not the case, then just need the extra effort to do something. Okay. Well, the next thing is, of course, your host local model. So typically, if you just stay in the WinC forever, you maybe only have base variant, which is just the default one. Then maybe it depends, but most cases it's maybe good idea to add a new layer for your migration. So base, then you maybe have Java variant on your host layer, and then you could do some like a conditional coding there too. Okay. So yeah, just variant means, which probably nothing new for you guys, but it's adding new dimension to Plex model. So you could code something specific for WinC, but you could do something specific for Java, for instance. So variant is, I never be able to clearly explain what the variant effect to the what. It's a really hard one to combine with the version and the languages, but in theory, it's affect some sort of triple and panel design. Like you can think of like you could have 50 to 50 is extreme example. So you could have 50 to 50 screen design, and you want to convert to the GUI, PC side of control design, then the panel should be completely different design. I mean, yeah, it's totally different. The designer is used. So the type DDS or type, what's the term? GUI, I forgot. But yeah, you could switch that, and then that's surely need to be saved independently. And a message property or source code, etc. So cover later. If there's one option, if like a source code you wrote in the Java, I mean C++, VB right now, well, you could use variant to override. Same thing with a different thing, but I mean like a Java code override. But that's one way. But there's other way to just use a language condition to invoke a different thing. Okay. And well, action diagram stay same because the action diagram could have like a meta condition to check variant or languages, etc. And the entity relation is concrete for the variant independent, so you don't get the different relationship, etc. Okay. And yeah, standard layout. So that's maybe we talk now maybe too late, but understanding how much your model currently have idea of standard layer. If not, well, you could maybe start adding something better. I mean, something tiny piece of that. That's again, this will affect some cost of migration. So if you spend the effort 10 years ago to do the standard layer, you have that amount of time is pay out now. But if you don't, there's of course different route to accomplish the result. So you just carry on, then changing as you needed at finding base, or you could create some simple standard layer, like you never assign the languages to function directly, or that kind of thing. You could maybe clean up a little bit. So lots of like implementation type of information may be good to extract, like a location name or database connection name or languages. Those three may be simple because you don't need to have that standard layer have any action diagram. You just attach the property, and then just instead of doing location name triple directly to function, just remove it and then just inherit from function. So then logically that shouldn't affect your base WinC layer. And yeah, we get the easy way to change languages for those new platform. So native code. So we talked a lot yesterday and today too, but yeah, this is a challenging part. So it depends how much you use outside technology. And then of course, Plex is very limited panel wise or action diagram statement wise. So you have a lot of things. So, but re-platform means you need to resolve every single things to make it converted to the fit the new platform. So how many functions using ActiveX, how many functions using source code, and yeah, of course rewriting, and yeah, look up the new control for the new platform. So Java or .NET may have a control, maybe similar with what you use in ActiveX. Well, there's a time needed to search, investigate those, and also find alternative always. Just lots of time. ActiveX doesn't necessarily control anymore, so it's just a built-in capabilities available, like file selector, browse file, etc. That's not anymore like ActiveX or any type of control in the other side as well, because it just uses system file selector just to very instantly using the command method. Okay. Well, package function. So that's something always I think discussed many this kind of course very beginning. So package concept, if you're on the RPG or C++, this is something new, or you never required to think about, but I try to explain best, but maybe Andrew or Evelyn maybe jump on. So C++ or RPG, so one function compiled to, don't count the internal function, but one function is counted, compiled to like a DLL or a program. And you deploy that program or, programs to library or folder. And you need to tell caller, consumer, or the consumer of that program where it's located. Where it's located means library name for the 400, it's 400, or folder, root folder of that thing. And you use library list or maybe path variable, or you use current directory concept on the Windows. Let's just OS sort out where your program is. Okay, then, however, Java or .NET has kind of extra folder structure inside of your program. So this is WinC example. This is root, everything. As far as you tell the where the bin directory is, it's fine. But for Java or C#, well, it's similar concept exists. You tell the like this one's build folder, build directory. But build directory is kind of a root of classes or programs, and each of Java or C# function has extra identification, kind of inner path, I could say. So like you see the most case com.sun.ut or whatever. So those are just not just the declaration of that class. It's actually like a path or folder like information you need to know. So in this case, you can tell like a path directory to build. But the program name is myfunc, but my func is actually exists the structure of com.cmfirst.util folder, or it could be inside of binary. So the name telling myfunc, I want to call myfunc from build directory doesn't work because it cannot look up exact full name. One of the reasons, simple reason why they do that, because Java is really open source, C# is open source. Anyone may be named your class with the same name. So there's probably a bunch of duplicated name exist if you just use a flat name. So that's why kind of like they use upper, upper structure to identify your myfunc is not same as yours. So that way you could have, in theory, have a same name class name, but as far as you define the different package name. In the Plex world, that's not really problem because Plex keep the input name as unique most time. So that's why kind of RPG or in C function is working, but to join to that new world, yeah, we need to consider that thing. Then in the Plex, there were package object before coming Java or C#. Well, just use it. That's just the same name, same meaning. And sometimes people use package for like a list or subject area, kind of, because it's just a kind of group of function. But when you convert it, package has very special meaning now. So it's not just a grouping thing. So it has to be going out from better to convert your package to like a list or a subject area, because that will affect your code generation as well. Okay, so one-time thing. So need initial packaging is required. So Plex provide like a package to etc. But the things are, so we want to convert this model to new one. So we have a one-time task needed, required, no matter what, just to include your function under packages.
May I say something about the
So
Plex
that's just
default
this.
package real quick?
Yeah, I think I have. I think I
Okay,
have.
yeah, just don't use
I
it.
have. Yeah,
Just
I have.
don't.
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
Yeah. So very first time you need to use pre-packager to or something. You know, someone worked very hard to define the package. Okay. Then still ongoing project ongoing. You may add new functions, etc. So those functions need to be added to the package. So that's probably people tend to forget, but that's need to be happened. So new function added, and yeah, but Plex has concept for package, what is Aaron mentioned. But so even you don't add any function to the package, Plex try to simulate something, but it's just by default, it's use the default local model name. So this is kind of conflict happens. So if developer A use model underscore A dot model, and then the other guy use model B dot model, then the same function is kind of generated within the two different locations. And if you generate just caller, I mean, of course, the caller and the code, I mean, yourself is important, but the caller is pointing to the model underscore A package name dot your function, my function. But when the model B is kind of get the source code messed up, the function is never find. And so here's a concept of default package definition on your Plex gen build option. If you go to Java setting, well, it's good practice. Well, first of all, don't use it. That's one. But you don't know until you generate if you're using or not, or you forget to include the package. So just define some rule of the build file. Everyone has some C name on the the default package name in the build file. I mean the build file setting. Then if you forget, you get all of a sudden the folder appear and some functions appear added. Source code is generated. So then if you keep monitor that and then you find the name of function, then you, oh, okay, so this shouldn't be here, and you can delete and you could yeah, just add it to the package somewhere. Yeah, so that's one tip, but it's just I think used to, but it's just good to keep in mind. Okay, so next.
Sorry, may I make one?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. There's one last like little tip I think that really helps with packages. Is Plex takes a scoped approach to packages. So if, let's say I have a function and a function nested under it. So function A and then function B is nested under it. If I assign function A to package A, function B, unless I say it's in a different package, will automatically be in the same package as function A. So another thing that can kind of come up, if packages get too huge, like 10,000 classes, that can get to be a problem. And so a good method that I found, especially with converting models, is just create a package for each entity, put the entity in that package, and then, I mean, you can then get more granular if you want, but then every function that's scoped under those entities will automatically be in a package named under that entity. Obviously, you'll have unscoped functions and things you'll need to do something with, but I found that's generally a good system to prevent packages from getting too huge and to have everything organized and to make it easier to not forget something. So, sorry, that was the last thing.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, I think it's probably already maybe small team, maybe already for the Plex, but I think it's a good idea to start with one or very few people to get start and get idea and get organize everything to be ready for the others join. Because the first part of migration is like a packaging or define the rule or find out something, and that can be used really the Plex or the associated tool. So other than just okay, today just 10 people work, 5 people works. That's probably just a little disaster before you know what to do. And maybe everyone go to the different way to do things, same thing. So to really recommend just to start small. So goal is, well, you could introduce standard layer if you find some direct language triple, etc. And yeah, and also, prepare how to run your application on the new platform, new technology database, and so on. Just to prepare everything ready. No need to everyone spend the same amount of time for the the first guy establish. And yeah, just the last one is the most important. Yeah, when you start, I think everybody has the same mindset. What we're doing. Even maybe just one guy maybe asked to convert to source code forever, but I think it's a good idea to have same mindset. What need to be. Yeah, bit too deep. So function languages, I probably mentioned too many times already, but this kind of thing you could maybe create convert to the function is a function instead of just directly to do. And so yeah, just found source code API. Yep, okay, find the source code API. So, well, there's a two kind of reasons you use source code. Typically, well, you need to be required to work with like a owner function resource. I mean, this is a bit a strange way to say, but you need to code something because you're using ActiveX on the panel, etc. So that's source code. Surely, most likely has to be there, but you may have like some other type of source code, like a utility, etc. So like a get string length, or generate grid or read write file, etc. Open browser, etc. So it doesn't necessarily to be source code call, source code embedded or scoped by that owner function, because it's just a common utility type of. So maybe it's not a bad idea promote the source code as utility function. Then we maybe just instead of calling source code embed to the many places, you may be able to just wrap as function, and then you just rely on the function call graph dependency instead of source code dependency. So then of course source code can be one place, and it's maybe a little easier to manage. There's always kind of pro and con if you have scope source code under function and you inherit from that main function, which is active library, does a lot, but you get all the cloned source code script function under every single function. Well, then good benefit is you can override on your local layer without, but that's maybe good, but at the same time, you may be copying the same thing many times, many places, and it's very hard if you want to convert, well, which one is pure, same as base. Well, of course, there's a property of a local override or not, but that's kind of a two kind of conflict concepts. So active library doing that way, but at the same time, if you know concrete what this function does, it's probably better to have just single source code rather than just copy everything to every single function inheritance. But that's, of course, need some extra effort, but you do anyway for that. There's my mouse point. Okay. So this kind of if statement, if you convert, so you can do this one within the caller directory, which means every single function you invoking. But if you do just to convert to the function, then you maybe need to replace the API call to function call, but you don't need to enter this amount of code. So it's kind of one replace versus. Then you do this, of course, inside of this function, but that's only one time. And you can, for all the caller of source code can be just simply replaced to function call. So you don't need to do like a meta condition and then different things many times. If the function itself is very popular, I mean, source code itself very popular called by many, this approach maybe saves quite a lot of steps to do that. Okay, continue some tips. Any questions so far? Or sorry, I have so far nothing. Okay, can't see the chat. Okay.
So far, so good, Yoshi. So far, so
Okay.
good.
Okay. Okay, and well, this one, how to find the language history proof, it's pretty easy. Just to, I think I probably am going to the very difficult way to mention, but I think the usage of type sys, WinC, or etc. from the moderator, you can see the if the function is directly assigned, I mean, etc. Also, you could just generate after configure your local model to the new protocol configuration, and then maybe you can generate, and you maybe still see the CPP code generated. That's just a massive way, but that's still something. And this is nothing mean to be here, but I just want to highlight this feature. I should talk this one in the tips session yesterday, but there's a already hidden functionality on the object browser tools menu. You can output the implementation names. So the naming wise, that's just very strange, but this one is very lighter version of output your model, except the large property action diagram, the panel design, but it's not just the output the implementation name. It's just the export everything like a triple and any object, etc. So maybe try generate and what you get. And it's not easy to be used unless you write some kind of program, but this is kind of tab separated text file, I mean CSV file, and it has a very useful information in it. So even you don't do the not part of migration, you maybe find something nice. And I'm using for this one for level by T2 to get, because this one tell more simple way, a cheap way to get the information rather than model API. So that's this one. Yeah, just take a look. It's easy to read the text, but depends on the size. There's no filter concept. It just dump everything. So, but it's a very nice tiny thing to take a look at your model. Okay, but again, it has a triple listed. So if you search the language sys in the text editor, you find there's directly defined function stuff. I mean, the language is defined or not as well. Okay, so this is covered in the exercise too, but this is kind of typical way to do. And you find a similar code in the active library or those pattern or the CA provided library quite a lot. So first thing is make sure that your function is invoke calling meta.options function, which most of function do that already. But if you create like a validation function, a very simple function, very root of like object shell based, that's maybe not the case. So just to call it. And then what's happened is if you call this, then there's a bunch of meta query about your program, your function at the beginning, at the generation time. So it's already all kind of defined some field, some meta information about your function without knowingly. I mean, it's just done. Then yeah, you can just straight to use like this kind of meta condition to switch. If this is WinC, then call this one. And if this is Java language, then do that, etc. And again, this meta condition is for generator, not the runtime. So one of these will be generated. So two will be not appear your source code at all. It's not a condition for your application runtime running time. It's a condition for your generator. I mean, Plex itself.
Can I
That's
just
a little confusing, but yeah, yeah.
so like a similar approach that doesn't need to use meta options is there's a meta statement plus if, and you can check the variant of a model. So let's say the storage model, the variant set to JDBC. You can say plus if storage / JDBC, and it will generate there. And that way you don't need to have the meta options. And there may be cases where you have maybe a web client variant and a Java client variant, but you only want to generate code for web client. Then the plus Java wouldn't work because that would work for both. So yeah, you can say plus if variant and then just give the name. So all the names are available in the action diagram palette.
Thank you. Yeah, very silly, but very quite useful tip is so in C++ or maybe VB script, you typically write this way to assign equal, but it won't work for Java or C#. So it's probably better to use like a from string or the value assignment, etc. But that's just a tiny tip. And yeah, ActiveX WinC client, well, it's used, and VB script is used, and Active Library is supported, of course. So if you use ActiveX through the Active Library, those parts most likely okay. It's just converted to the C# or Java. Well, then web client has some problem, but I think at least you can rely on the Active Library's configuration. Java being supported. Also, traditionally Java being ActiveX wrapper exists. So it's same ActiveX is wrapped by the kind of Java Beans wrapper for ActiveX, and then, so that's the way to do that. And active library is configured for Java, so you could keep using that. But if you have handwritten, so maybe need to be rewritten with Java. And C#, yeah, so same ActiveX supported, and then you can host a native WPF control if you want, and script, of course, with C#. Unfortunately, BB doesn't work. Well, one thing that you could do on the C# is like this one. So you could register the event through the source code, and also you could write event handler using source code. So that's little deep technique, but this one allows lots of flexibility to code if you want. So you can register additional logical event, well, mapping the. It's not logical event. It's you could like here. It's like a pure panel event registration for the calendar is double clicked. Then you just get those information, and then you fire the logical event using Plex logical event API. So that way, you can add any controls event register. Even ActiveX does have a like event mapping concept, but if you go to the WPF control, there's no way to kind of map, but you could do that through that. And the web client, maybe Andrew, maybe you can cover better.
Sure, yeah. So in web clients, the client is the browser. So you need to do everything from JavaScript frameworks or JavaScript templates. So as far as the model goes, there's nothing really in there. You just give the name of well, you can have control templates or page templates. So if, for example, you wanted to display a grid as a pie chart, that we have a template called, I think it's called web charts. And you can, for your grid in the control name, you can say template equals web charts. And that will handle all the presentation side of things. And the control templates can also send back the events that you would typically get from a grid. So it's kind of involved, but basically from the panel design, you're still using the regular controls like the edit controls and grids and everything, but you are basically saying I want to use a different template to display it on the web, and then yeah, you supply the template for that. But again, that's kind of involved, but yeah, basically you can't use ActiveXs, you can't use Java Beans. It's just all JavaScript. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And so this is some bonus if you migrate. So I think in the WinC, you use like a global character storage or like a local, I mean, I think global char storage, global numeric storage or something. So you can share like some data globally within your application scope, like a process of exe. Then you can access every single function can access the same data. But in a C# and Java, you could use field type sys object. And also, so type object here means you could store any instance of native class as field. So it just adds local variable of like this kind of HTTP client or file stream or kind of anything. So even long string data, if you don't want to store some very long string data, of course, the Java C# has 64-bit limit of length of strings, so which has more than you could define the Plex length. well, doesn't also terminate for you. So you could store that, and you define something object, and you tell what you want to set, and it's automatically store that information, and you can use it. So benefit, well, right hand is just a copy from Plex help, so you can find the same title, but you can store this function. I mean, field types this object is you can store any object in your function, but also global version is available. Similar concept with global char. So you could store instance of some class globally to anyone can access. I mean, any function access within your layer. So that's pretty much powerful. It's pretty HTTP client, maybe one example. So you create the in difference to the native Java C# HTTP client instance, and you want to invoke to external things. You don't need to prepare the HTTP client every time. You just invoke that and get the reference to that and then call request. So, and then most likely HTTP client itself is very static way, then it's handled like a pooling, etc., already built in. So you just get the difference, and you can do that. And the storing object means you can just store any temporary model. I mean, model means like a class with a bunch of data structure defined. So instead of just store the single string data, etc., you can store like your my company data model, which has a structure of data, etc. And also, like if you have a current sign-on user information, you maybe store current user ID, current username, current timestamp, etc. with a separate global char. But you can create a model of that, and you can just store in the single instance of like a sign-on information. You can grab the same way you doing that, but yeah, so that's kind of thing. It's cool.
And yeah, can I just mention at the 2 o'clock workshop, the web and API workshop, I'm actually using object fields to store the response from a REST API call. So it's stored as a JSON object, and then there's like source code to extract the information from there.
Thank you. Okay, and always just like probably repeating many times since yesterday, but think about alternative. So complex string handling could be regular expression, like email validation could be regular expression, which is new thing to run, but that's about lots of sample available. Like here, top 15 common use regex. I put the link. So people writing for you to do like different things, phone number validation, or I think like digit of a numeric only check, or email is one here. Password, you can put some strings password, so there's a one available. And yeah, URL validation if you want to type. So those are lots of people doing same thing, I guess. So then they just use the same regex concept, date format, entry check, etc. So you don't need to work hard. You just create some source code using regex to do the validation. So that's just yeah, lots of people. And then you find search just how to validate XYZ with regex. You most likely hit some answer, like a social security number, which may be not hard one, but 334 with hyphen. Yeah, so those are there. Just the tips. So you could use that regex stuff. Okay. Okay, exercise. So I think I hope everyone get the level 3M. But just a high level, so there's a one WinC or DBC function is defined. It should go to. So there's a two root exist, Java root and .NET root. So .NET root is just simply convert WinC to C#. And then there's a two exercise. I already mentioned some answer, but email validation and then grid generation is written in the source code and convert to new languages also converted to the function. And the Java version has same stuff. And yeah, as a bonus, it's going to the web client from there too. And on the desktop of the Bravo, you find the PDF link, which is little strange, appears a Google Chrome link, but on the top page, I mean, the desktop of the Bravo, this should have the PDF, and it's open with Chrome, and it has some free information and two exercise paths to from C# and Java. And also at the end, I put some answering source code for you. So I think today is not the time to learn how to write C#, but just the inspired idea is good. Like this one is email check. Well, in the C++, I show the example that just doing the char by char looping, but in .NET, they have a mail address class. So if you just give the value, then it throws exception if you give the wrong one. So that's very quick. It's nothing you need to do. You just pass the email string to the try to create a mail address. Then it's tell you are good or bad. That's kind of things you maybe find when you convert. What you're doing is maybe already other people maybe already done for you at the framework level, maybe.
Google is your best
Okay.
friend when you're learning just
Yep.
to write simple
Yep.
source code objects for
Yep.
new languages.
Yep. And the good part of
and a
C#
good
or
IDE.
Java is C# or Java is there's a bunch of friends.
Yes.
Same friends exist. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to go to our RPG document on the IBM site, and so it's really all handy. Just people asking same question. To do the homework, some people, right? So the kids asking, yeah, to do the homework. That's it. Okay. So that's probably about presentation part. And from here, I think you could continue exercise, or you just keep asking questions, etc. That's fine. And each level seems to have like a 10-hour limit, so you can probably use the 10-hour even after today, I believe.
And if you've got more than one monitor, you can copy the PDF file to your own PC and view that on one monitor. I know it's difficult to follow and do the coding at the same time.
Drop to the chat.
And any questions, I mean, you can use the chat or feel free to just speak up. We can just do whatever. The PDF file should be saved on the desktop. It'll have a Google Chrome link because we don't have Adobe installed on those VMs. So Chrome is considered the default opener for PDFs.
Yeah, I also send PDFs through the chat now. Okay. Hold on. Conference. Conference. Oh, no, not this guy. This guy. Okay, I pasted a PDF to the chat as well, so you could download.
Thank you.
For Brett Hill, I just resent an invite to the lab, so please let me know if he gets in okay. We've had that happen a couple of times where people get kicked out and they can't get back in. I don't know what Zoom is. I don't know what they did to the Zoom admins to make them so angry, but it must have been bad.
Python?
So one thing, just FYI, if you're in the next lab as well, the web application one, it'll actually be a different Zoom meeting. So we'll end this meeting at the end of at 2 o'clock and start a new one, just to let you know. I'm just checking. I assume the silence means everybody's able to progress okay? No problems with the VMs or the instructions or anything? Silence is also a way to say, yes, that's fine. Everything's going well as well. So,
Actually, I'm having a problem. My
okay.
Plex doesn't want to run. Well, I shouldn't say it. It opens, but then it just sits there and says working. And when I go to Task Manager, it says it's not responding.
I mean, right, Andrew, sorry.
I was about to say, did you try and open the model, or is it just kind of frozen?
Well, I tried it both. First I tried opening the model or starting Plex just by double clicking on the model. And
Right.
then I killed the task and tried to open Plex by itself. And Plex by itself is just sitting there hanging.
Oh, weird. So no one else has had this issue?
I'm in and writing source code at the moment.
So I guess we can, if you share your screen, we can switch and just take a look. But yeah, I don't know why it would be different, because basically everyone should have the same copy of everything. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can. I mean, this is what it looks like.
So yeah, I would probably kill that then. I'm just going to my. So make sure nothing else is, nothing else is really running, is it? So, okay. And has the timestamp changed on your Plex model? 21. So that was, a couple of days ago. So yeah, it hasn't been changed. So that's weird. So maybe I'd try just opening Plex on its own.
Well, yeah, that's what I tried the last time.
Could you power cycle your VM?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the next thing.
Yeah. Well, certainly not doing anything. So yeah, I guess that's turn it off and turn it on again. So I think you can just do that from the start menu. And that power button, restart. And so you probably get disconnected, and if you try and connect it again. Don't know how long it takes to reboot a VM.
Right. Took a little while to start up when I initially connected.
Yeah, the cloud instance takes a bit. If you're still having issues, we can open some litigation for Microsoft and Azure for ruining your workshop.
Yeah, and I've got an image I'm not really using, so I could probably just give you the link for that if that's not working.
Yeah, let me see here. See if I can. Oh.
So if anyone else is having issues, just let us know. We'll help as best we can.
Same thing.
Is it just locked?
Weird.
Yeah, I've never seen Plex do this.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Wonder if it's trying to run a license check and not resolving.
I we should have put temp licenses on the machine we cloned it from, so it should be okay.
Yeah. I'll email you just a copy of my shortcut for the remote desktop. I'm not certain it'll work, but give it a go.
If you don't mind, I'll stop sharing your screen so you can use what Andrew sent you, everything.
Sure.
So Dean, I'm just emailing that to you now, so let me know if you receive it or not.
Okay.
Build failed.
Yeah, I received it.
Great. Just let us know if Plex launches on that one or not. That's really strange.
Yeah. Yep, that one seems to be working just fine. So thanks.
Okay, great. So I hope you didn't. Well, I guess you didn't even get as far as opening the model, so you've not lost anything. So good.
Yeah.
But now Andrew can't do the assignment, so he's going to be left behind, which,
That's all right. I've got the end models.
yeah, you can just copy them.
Just skip to the end, yeah.
So yeah, you can continue to whichever exercise to the end of it. But if you have questions about web client or how the architecture works or anything like that, feel free to ask. Now's a great time to do so.
Are we expected to be able to run this thing on this VM or just compile it?
Should be able to run. Are you? Is it Java or the .NET?
The .NET.
Okay, that's a bit I wasn't involved in, but yeah.
Yoshi said he was having issues with C# connecting to the SQLite database that we're using for the web client. So that might be the issues you're seeing with C# trying to run. The web client should run straight away though, because the Java works well enough with the SQLite database.
Okay.
Is that what
Plus
you're
the
saying?
SQLite can be a little funky. I just found it being weird no matter what language you're using. So
Yes.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't use that in a production environment. It's just kind of handy for these VMs rather than setting up SQL Server.
Yeah. What's it take to validate an email address?
Test it out. Yeah, just it's using a regular expression. So that's
Actually, it's not your example one.
Tosh is using the C# class. Yeah, I don't remember what the Java equivalent is off the top of my head.
No, I thought you moved. I've got to open up my document again.
There's a regex. Yeah, there's a regex one right below the C# one.
Yeah, isn't C# using regular expression?
C# has a built-in class for that.
Although Microsoft's documentation tries to use regex, it had a nested function that it didn't like in the compiler.
Oh, we can blame Kiyoshi for that. He's not here.
Yeah, he's not here to defend himself. It's fine. For regex, though, there's lots of, if anyone is curious about, there's lots of good resources, lots of sites where you can just actively test your regex directly in the browser. Like there's a lot of people using it in a lot of different ways.
Same person.
At face value, it does all look like gibberish. So. Sorry, Jim.
The same person who does the ACE text that I use for the code snippets is also behind regex info as a website. And he does a regex buddy and a regex magic to help you write and test and run your regexes. And he's got a very full featured, unfortunately, it's a couple $100 for a permanent license, but very full featured regex client for Windows. You can point it at a directory and say what file types and just run it.
Oh, pretty cool. Yeah, there's a good website. I think it's called regex 101, which is it's like a online like validation thing, and it'll kind of break it down into. It'll tell you how many matches it found and for what reason.
Yeah,
that's what I use because I've been using regex a few times, but it is, as Abram says, gibberish.
It just looks like gibberish, but I mean, there's meaning to it once you start like reading and analyzing, but it at face value just does look like gibberish.
Yeah, I'm impressed anyone can do anything, and it's been around since the 60s apparently.
Yeah, and it is readable. It's just
it's just difficult to read.
It's not designed for reading, so you have to learn its characters instead of having a nice verbose thing.
Yeah, as well as for computers. Yeah, so. But it's, imagine trying to write the same thing by hand.
Yeah. So, and then of course you've got your line variants of regex. So the regex parser that he wrote, you can toggle between your different .NETs, your PHPs, your base expressions, your all the different languages out there.
All right, I didn't know that. Oh yeah, I see this 101 site has like PHP and JavaScript flavors, Python and Golang.
Well, I've yet to type in a valid email address, but whatever.
What are you typing in ones that actually should be?
Example at Microsoft.com.
That's I don't know. I've only worked with the Java and the web client bit, so yeah. Again, we can blame Kiyoshi.
Yeah. Oh well. And it did generate a GUID, so.
have you successfully run the web client on a Webster application server, or you guys always run it on Tomcat?
I think you're the only ones. Well, actually, no. There's trying to think. There's some other user that uses WebSphere, but I think we did one for you kind of a few years ago. But
Yeah.
I just remember there was like about 100 steps to deploy it.
Okay. And
So, yeah.
Tomcat seems to be easier most of the time. So
yeah, are your people running Tomcat on the IBM I, or are they running on Linux?
Yeah, some have. Yeah, trying to think. The ones I'm working with Windows and Linux, but I haven't been involved in the IBM I for a while. So, but I know in the
yes,
past.
we have people that are actively running it on there. So yeah.
Okay. I was wondering about keeping it up to date on the I.
That the administration portion of the I is not my expertise, so I can't tell you there. But,
Yeah, well, it's not part of IBM's software, so
yeah,
that's the part where.
And it's not part of the stuff they've got under their open source side in the PACE environment.
Maybe.
Because the PACE environment they've used to use yum from the Linux world, so you can just run yum to update anything.
Okay.
Yum update and yum upgrade, I think, would be the two commands.
Okay.
So what's PACE?
PACE is their Unix shell on the IBM I.
All right.
So from in there, you can install various open source packages they've pre-compiled for you. Or I think you could install GCC and compile them up yourself if you wanted to go really unsupported. You can either jump to it with, there's a command on the green screen that opens up a very limited terminal emulator, or you can register your SSH key and SSH over and use a more nicer putty or whatever your normal terminal emulator is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
my business partner claimed that you can actually run a version of Red Hat in that environment.
No,
I don't know if that's true or not, but probably.
it's not a full Linux. For that, you want to spin up a slice on your host and install an actual Linux on there.
Yeah, we have that, but he just claimed that you could do some kind of VM Red Hat instance inside there if you wanted to.
Don't know why you'd want to, but okay.
yeah. But I think when we were setting up Tomcat, we just basically launched it from the Java command.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was, well, whatever the Java command uses, yeah. But we just basically copied the folders from, I think, my PC over to IFS, kicked off the Java command to launch it, and it just ran. So I was kind of impressed with that.
Yeah.
And to deploy, you just drop your WAR file just directly into the web apps folder, and Tomcat just watches that folder and recognizes it and deploys it. So I just wait a few seconds and it's ready to go.
Okay.
IBM claims to have done a lot of optimization around their Java so things run better.
Well, it's a powerful box, so yeah, it should work quite well. They've got their own, is it called J9 or J? They've got their own JVM engine that, yeah, isn't a typical one, but yeah, I heard it's quite good.
Do most of your people migrate to full Java server side and client, or do they sometimes, if they're still on the IBMI, are they staying with the DDS RPG?
Yeah, I know some have stayed on RPG because there was no actual changes needed on the Java on the server side. The main one I've been working with, they were originally WinC, WinNTC server, and they switched to Java just because it's just the same skill set for the client and the server functions. So you're not really kind of switching between platforms. So just all the source code is all maintained in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the easier way to go. I would say you probably get better performance from kind of the RPG because that's kind of close to the data. But
I can speak on that a little more, actually. Yeah, so I've had clients, several go from C++ RPG to, they went to Java. This was because they actually wanted to get off the IBMI and switch to SQL Server. We have had others that just are wanting everything to kind of be in the same WAR file and everything in the same kind of code base. The main performance problem that can come up is just because of inefficient data access code. So for example, like in your RPG, you go and you want to get all the active customers for this company. And so you would do a fetch keyed on that, all the customers for that company. And then later you'd filter out all the ones that aren't active. And in RPG, that kind of works just because the RPG in the I series is kind of a bulldozer through data. It's a mid-range system. It's just going to plow through the inefficiencies. But when you just take that code and then move it to just straight Java and everything's doing JDBC access to the back, that's inefficient, and it's going to be slower. And so typically the thing to look out for if you are going away from that RPG is essentially data access efficiency. But just to like kind of tell you, like, it's the difference between two when their actual optimized code is really non-existent. I've had complex situations where I've rewritten I've combined what was like 5 RPG functions combined into like bringing back a data set into a single SQL query, and it's like 5 times faster than it was even running in RPG. So it just goes to show that more efficient querying is actually probably better than whichever language you are generating in. That being said, like your web server will need to be in like the same data center as your iSeries, because if you have some connection like lag between the two, then obviously every query your web server is going to be making to the IBMI is going to be slower. Sorry, I know that was a long-winded answer, but does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you had a thing where I don't know if you were, somebody does RPG, just does the convert, stays with RPG, and then slowly takes client function by client function and has kind of a mixed flavor where some of the stuff's Java and some of it's RPG server?
I haven't actually tried that, but there's no reason why you couldn't do that. I mean, the only real issue with that is like how you would implement it. I mean, I guess you would just have, you'd switch your variant would be the best way, and then you slowly just generate certain things and rewrite code. Because obviously best practice is not to do any language triples on any functions unless you absolutely have to. So, but I mean, I haven't had any experience doing that exact situation, but there's nothing stopping you from doing that. You would probably just want to chain. Well, no, actually, yeah, you wouldn't even need different connection settings. So just the application would just pick it up. So yeah.
That's what I was thinking might be a good path for us, is just try to do RPG form and then Java on the client, and then start working on switching them over and see what we had to do SQL wise with the where clauses. Because when you guys were talking about that in other previous sessions, I had sent Andrew a question about that, because I kept picking up that you had to switch from use rows filtering to SQL where clauses to help with a lot of filtering to improve performance.
Yeah. Yep. It really, and it's not like, that's like not a knock on anyone, right? Because obviously when you're doing DDS, like you have very limited options just from directly in Plex of how you can access your data. And so unless you make a logical for almost every situation, which a lot of times isn't feasible, you know, you're going to have to be using that use row kind of setup. But it's just, I mean, I've just had situations where I had a client where they're processing through 20,000 records to get 50 records. You know, there's no universe where that can be fast, you know?
Sorry,
So-
guys, I'm back. So I
Thanks, Yoshi.
can help. Yeah. So I think DDS RPG versus Java main difference is RPG program is and database is part of pair at the compile time. So it's really it's pointer based, cursor pointer based. That's our DDS RPG access. So when you run against a huge table, 1 million or 2 million, whatever, it doesn't matter. You just open the cursor, point the cursor at the pointer you set, and you can start to read immediately. So you don't feel that the large size or not for at least the fast access, because it's really just pointing the cursor and they're ready to read. So, but for Java, or I think C# or the other side, so you can compile independently. So it doesn't know until it's runtime. So then the main issue, if you want to query, so you put the where condition and order by, etc. You ask database to prepare data for me. Well, that time, the program is wait until it's finished to prepare the whole thing. So you cannot start reading first row while database is it's preparing some work, working really hard. So that gap is very difference of compare with the DDS RPG versus the SQL, and that means like a DDS RPG is very, your data is kind of part of program memory already embedded. So that's why you're doing reading and then yes, no, I like this row, I don't like that row. That kind of works fine. Of course, if you ask database filter, that's maybe efficient, but that concept is works. But for the Java or the other side of programming, if you don't do the filter on the part of SQL and then reading and then bring the row to your program layer and do that condition, and I don't like it, go next, etc. It's very costly. So that's a very typical performance problem. No matter what you do, it's just the nature of language or platform itself. So that's kind of my one tip here to make it, to be aware. It's just same as Plex, and also because Plex started from RPG at the beginning, well, actually 2E history. So SQL generated kind of try to very simulate what the RPG data access does. So that's probably not really necessary to do most of business case. So that's the other thing. The Plex generated SQL is not efficient from your kind of business purpose. Sometimes I mean,
You mean the position?
But yeah.
You mean the position? The restrict is fine. The position,
restrictor
where
with
logic
condition.
is very strange and not great.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, like, so I mean, I just strongly recommend, like, you can use like some of those SQL filter patterns I've used in past conferences and just use that as something to build off of, because I mean, yes, it's more work than just creating a view and generating the single fetch for it. But like, for example, just for like fetching next surrogates and just being able to say fetch top one row, I mean, on a big table, that's going to save you seconds. And so, I mean, just little bits like that make a big difference.
Okay. Yeah.
The other thing that actually comes from this, and it may not seem like a lot, but again, if you're on a big table, just limiting the number of fields you fetch, because sometimes fetching the entire view worth of fields, just because that's the simplest way to set up a Plex. If you only need 6 of those fields and it's like got 30 fields and you're processing through hundreds of records, I mean, you're losing probably, half a second there. So.
Okay, yeah. So what percentage of block fetch, single fetches do you guys have to mess with when you're?
I mean, really, it's just, it's all situational. I mean, I'm not saying don't use block fetch because I use it all the time still. It's just like sometimes when I'm doing something with a lot of filtering, like for example, you'll see in the conference, in the conference app from last year, and we're using the same model for our workshop in a second. I use that same block fetch. I just put some select where logic on top of it to put some dynamic filtering. So, I mean, and also there's just times where you don't really even need it. And then if it is something that is there most of the time, so it's going to be for most things, maybe the filter pattern that Eric spoke about yesterday might be something that would be easier because you're just, setting up more of a model setup rather than writing actual SQL.
Okay.
Speaking of fields, Abram, when you were talking about adding only some fields from a view to a variable, why don't you just drag the view in and then drop the fields you don't want?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's one way. I honestly do that in a different way. I'd put it in a temp variable and then drag it into there because I don't, when I'm doing custom SQL functions, I don't like to have the view reference just because I'm worried that somebody's going to add something to the table. And since my SQL query doesn't reference all the fields that it's expecting, it's going to fail. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a good idea because you just say local view and then you just drag and drop what you need and then remove it.
As far as the where clause goes, I've got our patterns building that just as a for each field in SQL data.
Yeah.
So that way, if people do add more stuff to the view, I don't have to modify my block fetch. I can just rebuild it.
Yep.
Okay, we're getting close to the end of the session. So I've had some questions, people asking if they can like copy the exercise folder and work in their own time. So yeah, the VMs won't be available for beyond today. So you can just copy the folder on your virtual machine and then switch back to your laptop and then just paste it. Probably to the same location will be the easiest. Then you should be able to continue. You might not be able to follow the web client exercise because we use Eclipse and that's referencing the Tomcat and JavaScript folders. So you would have to manually configure those yourself. But email us, we can send instructions for that.
Yeah, it's not a lot of steps. I mean, a simple email will help.
I would recommend zipping up the folder before copying it.
I think 7-zip's actually on that machine as well. So 7-zip will compress it a lot smaller than just a regular zip file.
Because copying it's nearly 12,000 files and goes really, really slow.
Okay. So yeah, good idea then. Yeah, you might want to zip it first and copy that across.
So just to let you know, I'm going to have to end this session just because I don't know who's going to be joining the next one. So I'll go ahead and end this and I'll start the next session in like 1 minute and then we'll get started on the API section.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And email us if you have any comments or questions about this session. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Great lab. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep. See you in 30 seconds.
All right.
Yeah.
Not quite ended, but anyway.
Mhm.